Hi, Pawan. Hi, Satya.
Hi, Namita. Hi, Pavan. Good morning, everybody.
Over to you, Namita.
Thank you so much, Pawan. So after that, deck, and after we've sort of presented our POV on how you think through university relations, what we also wanted to include was a practitioner's approach as to how you can leverage academia, right? And we thought nobody better than to join us than Satya, who has been on both sides of the fence, who has experienced both the corporate as well as the academic environments and played a critical role in terms of managing these relationships from both sides. So thank you so much. I think Satya, first of all, for taking the time out to be with us. From what I can assume is a busy Wednesday morning. But if you could quickly just sort of introduce yourself and the role that you've played even prior to your current role at PS University. We'll start with that, and then I'll jump straight into the questions.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. I'd like to start with a quick intro. Spent a little over 20 years at Intel. Half of it was in the US and half of it has been in India. And within Intel, I've played several roles, starting with core R&D. I used to be an analog designer that's called the black magic of engineering, at least VLSI. Worked on all the three Intel architectures. Went on to do strategic planning, helping define products. So, and then finally the product management of the last generation of servers. Outside of Intel, I have done a startup, so taken a greenfield approach to bringing something new. And outside of these two things, I am a guest faculty at IIM Bangalore. I teach product innovation and technology management. And the latest startup, if you will, in my life is the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, which is CIE. And at CIE, we are trying to do things very different because the world has changed. And so over the course of this conversation, maybe I can share more. But that in a nutshell that's my background, and I'm very excited to be on this panel.
Thank you so much, Satya. I think because you've been on both sides of the fence, right, and you have so much experience even driving it from the corporate side of it, I wanted to start with that a little bit first, right? What are the typical factors or reasons as to why corporates even start to explore academic relationships, right? So we've heard some of them, I think, in bits and pieces: talent acquisition, branding, innovation and co-creation, etc. But let's just start with the basic building blocks. So what are those factors that even help corporates or push corporates to start considering academic partnerships?
Yeah. And I think you did a pretty good job when you gave the overview of the different models, and then there's a maturity in the life cycle of the university industry engagement. But at the fundamental thing, no matter where you look at, and we looked at this at a fair level of detail when we published a paper with Intel in 2021 on how best these collaborations work. And at the heart of it, no matter where you look at, it is talent. Right, that forms the bedrock of a good, collaboration. But that's not the be-all, end-all, right? And if you look outside of the talent acquisition part, and even talent acquisition comes in many flavors, and we'll come to that in a second. But beyond talent acquisition, it's a question of building a good R&D pipeline. And what I mean by that is in core established areas of R&D where, let's say, the industry and the university partner are on a reasonably level playing field, you can really advance the R&D capabilities of both the organizations. And if you look at, say, Berkeley or MIT or Stanford, some of the universities that you mentioned, I mean, they've contributed enormously, right? So it's not 1 + 1 = 2, but it's significantly more. In the areas of applied research, again, the university IUC, I'll call it IUC just for the sake of brevity, industry-university collaboration, the IUCs really result in outstanding extensions of existing, R&D work. The third area is really around take an existing R&D effort that is there, maybe it's a given product or in a given marketplace, work with the university to develop interesting different approaches, right? You mentioned core, adjacent. So the exploratory work can actually be done by the university, and I'll give you some examples of which that we are currently doing. So these are some of the things beyond the talent. Talent forms the bedrock, but then beyond that, I think advancing R&D in core areas, in adjacent areas, And then finally, the one thing that we haven't talked about yet is there is a sea change that is happening out there. If you look at the technology or the clock rate or the skill requirements, and the word innovation, is at the heart of everything that we do, be it a startup, be it an established industry or a university. And I think we need to reframe this collaboration to really incorporate the innovation part. And I can give several examples when we get to it, but I'll pause here so that, that gives a quick nutshell of what these collaborations can be.
Yeah. It does. And I think at some point, I also maybe do want to touch upon, like how corporates are sort of self-limiting in how they explore universities and why that typically tends to happen. Maybe we'll touch upon that when we talk about typical challenges that crop up. But so that's one side of the fence, right? I mean, why corporates typically look at academia. But tell us on the other side, and I think the audience would be very, very interested to know, is that when a university looks at partnering with the corporate, what do they look at, and what are these factors that our audience needs to be aware of? Because I know they've struggled. We know they've struggled on the IP part, on the relevance of the problem, on the quality of the talent, etc. So what's in it for the universities to partner with corporates, and what do they look for when they say yes or no to a corporate partnership?
Yeah, I'll split the response into two parts. What do the universities look for, and what do the universities run into in terms of the challenges, right? What the universities look for, at least at the highest level, it's to ensure that, we can develop a good set of talent that is easily absorbable by the industry, right? That's at least the goal. But we know that there are several gaps, and there are some stark gaps with respect to, say, the employability gap, for instance, right? And there's a recent Team Lease report that says that 78% of the leaders, and this is a statistic with respect to India, believe that the graduates are not quite ready, from an employment perspective. So there are large gaps, but at a fundamental level, the universities are looking to get their students trained for the real world. Second is a very important aspect, whether it is the developed economies or in India, the universities look for funding for research. It could be basic research or fundamental research, or even just applied research. So funding is another instance. The third one, which we don't talk about, and that is so important, that something that we've realized in the last 5 years in my journey here in academia, is mentorship, right? The industry probably has overlooked this thing, or at least when I was in the industry, I would say, we all know this stuff. We designed 40 nanometer chips, and there's a whole bunch of things that need to go with it. But, if you look at the syllabus or the curriculum, we're still teaching, way old stuff, right? So if we can mix and match, if there is an osmosis between the industry experts coming in, talking, doing the guest lectures, there are a number of engagement models. But if we can do that, I think, the mentorship is something that universities really look for. And the fourth one is, this is an open secret, exposing the faculty to real world experiences, right? The faculty, for the most part, I would say, are brilliant. They're very hardworking, very committed. And we've all been through college, and we've had our own role models, right, in universities. But that is not enough, right? Hard work and commitment is not enough. I think they need to be given some exposure through fellowships. So these are some of the things that I think universities would look for, in IUC, the industry-university collaboration.
Got it. And great. That's really interesting. And I think exposing the faculty, bridging the employability gap, etc., are really sort of key pain points that need to be solved for. Just as a segue, right, from there is, have you noticed that universities are typically open to long-term partnerships, long-term sort of collaboration programs, or does it have to be, is there like a formula for success? Does it have to be shorter term? Does it have to be longer term? Have you seen certain first principles like that, or thumb rules?
Yeah. Before I get to the answer, in some sense, what I have seen, at least in the last 5 years, is that the collaboration has sort of become unidimensional. It's all around talent, and pretty much everything else tapers off, right? So if you look at what is an ideal thing based on your question. You really want to build a long-term relationship, right? And typically, if you look at it, industry comes to the campus for on two occasions. One around the placement season. I mean, everybody descends on it. Everybody's here, and then after that, there's a lull. The second one is good industries have come forth and they're part of hackathon, ideathons and such, which is again a very limited engagement. At best, we do 24-hour hackathons and 48-hour hackathons, but that's 1 or 2 days. So what we've experimented with, this is with a GCC, the world's largest semiconductor company, won't go beyond that. But what we did was we took a very different approach, and we said, the short-term stuff, this shotgun method is just not going to work. It doesn't yield results for either of the two people, right? So what we built was a research innovation contest, or RIC for short, that stretch between, we've done 2 iterations of it, and they are typically between 8 to 10 months, roughly encompassing 2 semesters. And I'll give a quick overview to say why this is different and why we had some amazing outcomes. We framed the problem that was very strategic to both the industry and the university. In this case, it was AI, ML, and in the first year, it was computer vision and a set of problems associated with that. And the second year, it was natural language processing, NLP, also within AI, ML, right? And picking an area that each of the partners are both excited, very relevant for both the partners, and then embarking on a long-term relationship. This is typically 2 semesters, so that's about a year. You get some really amazing stuff for both the partners. And if I were to just quickly list out what the industry gets is essentially a good tested talent pool, low risk, right? I mean, because you've seen these kids, they're in their final year or just, the pre-final year, these guys, and industry has had no, challenges in just offering the internships, many of them leading to full-time placements with, I would say, almost no risk of, a talent mishire, right? But on the university side, a lot of faculty development programs. So before, they even talk to the students, we made sure that, AI, ML, and you would think it's all computer science, but we were really pleasantly surprised that, people from mechanical engineering, biotech, were all part of this AML training, and, they walked away with it. And then, the students are, and we, there's a particular single board computer that was given an inference engine. I mean, that was just not even in our labs, not in a curriculum, not in anything. And by the end of the year, I mean, these kids were really doing. And if you do it on one of the inference engines, you can go to the competition and you have a basic, I mean, once you know how to drive a car, you can pretty much drive any other car. So I think amazing stuff. I've got lots of data to share, but a partnership that is long and sustaining, built with strategic intent and a shared vision has a lot to offer.
Yeah, and I think just as an extension of that, it helps not to get overwhelmed by the initial cost in terms of time and money, because the long-term benefits and the long-term sort of payoff can be so significant, right? So that's, I think that's another sort of extension of that. So one of the questions that's coming from the audience is, do you suggest that the industry needs to come forward to enrich the curriculum, that is add subjects in semester and basically design the curriculum so that it's more practical, right, with the corporate needs? So is that something that you think is a valuable effort? I mean, if you want to take that up, it's some from the audience.
It is, and that's a very good question. And, I think a lot of the industries have, they really put their money where their mouth is, and they're part of what we call the board of studies. So the industry is invited. In fact, just 2 weeks ago, we had a board of study discussion. It's also called the DCC, Department Curriculum Committee. And the committee comprises of invited members, experts from industry as well, and they contribute quite a bit, right? So please don't take any of the things that I'm saying as, it's either a PS university or an IIT thing. What I'm talking about is in a general stuff. In good universities, there is a healthy mix of things. For instance, got a lot of inputs about what are some of the relevant things within the AIML thing or within 5G or IIT, right? So this happens in selected places, but what we would like to see is this happening at scale, where good panelists, and this time we had from Nokia, we had people from Cisco, a bunch of good GCCs who came in, and it's just a half a day thing. I mean, half a day followed by a lunch, and then there's some, get together. So it's an amazing thing. Yeah. I think that is, I would say table stakes, that because, this employability gap is actually, a finger pointing exercise. You drop the word employability gap in a group of professors and industry, and this conversation takes off in 100 different ways, because, there's so much to talk, but this is a very small investment that somebody can make and be part of the thing, co-create the curriculum that the industry really wants. So I would say, that's something that can be done. And in most good universities, I would say there's a very structured way to engage with this thing, but it's not enough, right? That is not enough. That is being done in many places, but I would say that falls short of many other things.
Yes, I know another question that has come up is on IP sharing, and we'll come to this. I know we discussed this when we said, okay, what are some of the top challenges that mitigate, but maybe should we move to that question? I mean, what are some of the key challenges, right? IP sharing, I think, is the most commonly quoted one in terms of who shares what and who owns what in terms of institutional knowledge. But are there others? Is the quality of the talent, is the willingness of the professors, or the mindset on either side a key issue? Do you maybe just want to walk through some of these challenges, and what do you propose? How do GCCs sort of mitigate them, right?
Yeah. So we looked at this in depth before we frame the partnership or the collaboration, right? We looked at the existing models. We looked at how things are done, say, in a developed economy. Think of Stanford and Berkeley and MIT. And then we said, what are some of the challenges here, say, from a GCC context here in India, right? The first thing that we discovered was, trust, right? The university and industry, there are several engagements. There are lots of things that are happening, but at a deep level, if you say, I want to kick off a 1-year research innovation contest and not an ideathon hackathon that just lasts for a day, the fact that I could only get my ex company to, come up as a partner in the initial days. Now we have more than that, and it's been a wonderful journey so far. But, I think the first one is building the trust. The second one is, if anybody's worked with, a good, strong GCC, which has got a lot of intellectual property, just the legal process of getting an MOU done could take a couple of months, right? So what we did in this case was we created literally a 2-page MOU, which said, the best minds shall come, we'll make the best effort, and no promises are made, no funding is given, nothing is expected out of it. So it was essentially a shell, kind of a mother document, if you will, which would enable us to build other things, and which we did, right? There are addendums that were brought on board saying, so taking out the complexity of the legal stuff. And to do that, I think the first element is the trust. The second is, lessening the legal complexity. The third one, you nailed it, which is the intellectual property. And there is a genuine concern from the industry, and I can, empathize with that. I've been on the other side. But I think we have to find clever ways of doing it. And one of the ways that we did this was to say that these problems that were given, they were real problems that this company was working on, but it was stripped of all of the context so that it could be presented to an external audience without any, NDAs, right? And the other thing that we said was, we're not going to use any proprietary tools. We're going to use open source, and especially in AI, ML, and other emerging areas, there's a plethora of tools and resources, and the GitHubs and all of the things for collaborative development. So we completely sidestepped the intellectual property, the googly that comes. And we said, if some good work comes out of it, if there is some intellectual property, we will do the right thing, right? We will have a discussion as to, whether we own the thing and we give you the first right of refusal, or the vice versa, depending on the starting point, depending on how much we're vested in and all of that, right? And honestly, Namita, if you just work for a year, I don't expect, IPs to come out by the dozens, right? It takes quite a bit of things. So we said, let's not have this gate us. If something good comes, we'll all be good people and we'll discuss it. So there are no preconditions. The other thing that usually trips up these collaborations is the financials. The universities clearly say, oh, can you give me this funding? Can you give me this much? And so one of the things that we said was no funding required, right? No funding required. These are open source tools. These are students And, if everything goes well, have a good set of awards and certifications, and which they did, right? So I think we kept the financials out of this whole thing, at least in the first 2 years. In since then, and good things have happened. We've got hardware grants, we've got other things, but to build the trust and the first set of relationship, we kept the financials out. The timeline, I think we've already covered. We said this will not be a one shot or a shotgun kind of a thing, 1 day, 2 day, 1 month. This has to go on for a minimum of 1 semester, preferably 2 semesters. And lastly, we said, look, this is the first time we are doing, or this is one of the earliest things. Let's come with an experimental attitude. We'll learn along the way. We'll take all the good ones. And that's exactly what happened in the first iteration. We found a number of shortcomings, and that got really nailed out in the second iteration that we did for the natural language processing based problems, right? So I think these are some of the 5 or 6 key things that we said are key challenges, but we said, let's frame this engagement and collaboration in a way that sidesteps all these things. Otherwise, we'll never get off the starting block, and we'll continue to keep doing the same old stuff. And the results have been quite impressive after 2 years.
That's awesome. I think a lot of it, you talked about like tempering your expectations, like IP will not come up in the first year of collaboration, and you really have to sow the seeds of a strong program first, and that should be the focus. And so you sort of set up success, accordingly. Just one, I think, extension is, and I know a lot of attendees must be curious, is this layered? Does this differ in terms of tier 1 universities and your IITs and IIMs and ISBs of the world versus tier 2 universities in terms of the complexities that crop up, right? Because typically corporates are partnering with both or are exploring partnerships with both, right? So this IP seems to be a little bit more layered, a little more complex when it comes to the IISCs and IITs of the world. And so should GCCs set up, put their eggs in multiple baskets to navigate or mitigate this a little bit, right? What is your experience of having done it?
Yeah. I've worked closely with the tier 1. They're good friends of ours. This is a collective ecosystem. There is no competition per se. So I've seen some of the centers of excellence, say at IIT Bombay, and they're far ahead. They have some amazing equipment, amazing talent, good collaborations and such. My only pet peeve is that it needs to go beyond that, right? Good work is happening in all of the tier 1 institutions, and power to them. But I think the kind of opportunities that we have. This is from, the Coursera job skills report that came out last year. 85 million jobs are going to be displaced because of automation. But then the positive side is another 145 new jobs are going to be coming in. And 69% of the companies say they are facing talent shortage. So the answer lies not just in tier 1 and premier institutes. The answer, actually, if you truly want to crack this employability gap, the talent gap, and the pressing needs, I think we need to go broad, right? So while I think tier 1 and premier institutes have a place under the sun, I think the real stuff, especially, and as I call this as the innovation part of it, right? There are many ways. Let me give you an example. This year, we've kicked off a pilot program called CPIP. It's called Capstone Project with Industry Partner. The industry partner, after much due diligence, gives us a curated set of problems in a particular area that they care about, right? And this is a real problem. And if I want to be very specific, what we're designing is we're working on a USB hub for a mobile test infrastructure. So they have about 500 mobile phones at any given point in time running tests. So you can imagine 500 phones connected to the chargers 24/7. These things die, in about 2 to 3 months or 6 months. It's a tremendous amount of cost. So we're working on a USB hub that is smart. So it's controllable. So when the device is not being used, this thing can can be put to rest or in a low power state, saving energy, saving the device cost, and a bunch of other things, right? So as part of the Capstone project, which is stuff that happens over a year and a half, at our university, it's a year and a half, 3 semesters. So we're taking on industry problems, and we're trying to see if we can actually deliver a working solution. Now, will it be a product or a full solution? No, it won't be. But what we are offering them is the exploratory space, well-researched. The first semester is we research the problem, document it, and say, this is the problem that we see, and what do you think? That itself has been very, very useful for our industry partners. The second semester, which starts in August, we hope to be able to implement at least 2 or 3 different prototypes, and then be able to show it to our partners and say, given this problem statement, it can be done at least in 2 or 3 different ways. These are the pros and cons. And if you're willing to fund us, we're willing to go and, build an MVP or a minimum viable product, right? So we're taking that as an approach to trying to enthuse our industry partners or startups. These are small and medium companies, by the way, SMBs, who can engage in advanced research, which otherwise they would not have done. They always have a product pipeline, they have a product roadmap, and they'll continue to invest in that. But if there are exploratory areas that they want to do with very little cost and very little risk, I think the universities, tier 2 universities, I would say, are a great way to start.
Oh, that's awesome. And, and like I said, I think it helps to have these partnerships and continue to explore it with both tier 1 and tier 2. But one of the things I'm hearing, Satya, is that, the relevance of the problem itself to the company roadmap, right? Whether it's an established idea or something that the company is still in the exploratory or blue ocean for the organization is absolutely critical. But I think one of my final questions is, how do you measure the success? And I want to take 2 lenses to this. One is to help the corporate decide whether you should continue to sustain the partnership or close it or evolve it into something else. So like a go or a no-go decision on the way forward with the university. But the other part of it, and then the GCC construct, is to secure more funding, right, from the global organization and to show global impact. Now, against that lens, what are some of the metrics or KPIs that you believe GCCs need to be looking at, success measures, in order to be able to do that, right? In order to be able to build that strong business case. Anything that you can sort of add in your experience?
Yeah, I'll add some qualifying comments. I think the chart that you showed in terms of the metrics, that was a pretty comprehensive one. So I would say that you've done a pretty good job of putting there. But let me add some color to that. Right. At the end of the day, a partnership like this or a collaboration like this is going to be measured on outcomes. And the outcome that both the parties care very dearly is, the talent, right? So I think we need to come up with a different set of metrics with respect to the quality of the talent that is coming up, and the risk that is involved, right? So one of the things that, and by the way, we are in the 6th year of the MOU. We started in 2018. We've just completed 5 with the same GCC. So we've got new ones, but the other one is we're into the 6th year. We've completed 5. Is because they keep coming back because we've done a couple of things. We've greatly reduced the risk of hire. They've seen these kids at work. They've been impressed. International publications, conference publications, jointly with the GCC. These are things that don't just happen because, I can't stand up and say, oh, we did a wonderful job and here's a great talent we've produced. Sorry, I mean, this is a tier 1 conference that it's a double blind way of saying, is this content good? Somebody checks and says, yeah, hey, this is amazing if this could be done in a 7 or a 6 semester, right? So I think the metrics have to be different. And these are metrics that are known to everybody, which is, international conference public. So I'd say set the bar high and push everybody to achieve that. For instance, one of the things that we have not been able to do so, right, is we've not produced patents yet. But what we're hoping is that we can do. The second thing is, we've earned the trust of the GCC, so much so that we are running a very niche course for them. We're training some students as part of the 8th sem we offered. It's in a very niche area. It's called EFI, Extensible Firmware Interface, that sits between the hardware and the low levels of the OS. Very niche area, but we're creating talent because there is an acute shortage of talent in that particular area. So we're, part of the curriculum was given by Intel. Oh, sorry. But mostly it was developed, right? The shell is there, but then we say, hey, in order to actually make this useful pedagogy-wise and other things, and then make sure that these talent are usable in the industry, putting the entire program together is something that we've been able to do. So I would say, 3 things, keep it simple, be very creative in the way you structure these collaborations, and 3, just go all in, right? Most of the things that we do are kind of half-hearted, checklist, mandate-oriented. Oh, I visited 20 campuses, I did 3 or 10 hackathons. Some That's all okay. I mean, it's good. I don't say we should discard it. But I think if you want more meaningful outcomes and measurable impact, I think we've got to look at it in a very different way.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I think a lot of the success and the outcome, quality of the outcome depends on the quality of the intent, right? That the corporate goes into the partnership with. So I think that's a really amazing takeaway. Just one question before we close the discussion is I think there's a question on whether any comment on leveraging CSR funds towards R&D and also having a joint proposal for securing government grants. I assume joint proposal is between the corporate and the academia, so academic institution. But any experience or any commentary that you want to offer on that?
No, sorry, I don't have any experience. I would love to say that, yes, that's definitely a lever that should be used, but I don't know the legalities of using CSR for academic collaborations. So I haven't done that. And sorry, I don't think I can answer with any certainty, but if we could use the CSR for some of these collaborations, say towards the social cost, because a lot of the things that we could do, for instance, one of the things that we're doing with another large GSC, the world's largest networking company, is working with them on SDG related challenges, right? The Sustainable Development Goals, that's bundled into a number of social challenges. And how do you apply technology to that? So I would like to think that something like that would qualify for a CSR, because at the end of the day, you're proposing technology-oriented solutions for social challenges.
Yeah. But I mean, it's depending on the problem statement that you're solving, you can explore it coming out of the HR and the talent acquisition budget as well. So you can sort of hedge your bets. But that's, I think, what I had, Satya. Thank you so much. I think it was extremely insightful to hear you talk, because the wealth of your experience really comes through, I think, in how you've presented and the number of use cases you've been able to solve on both sides. But thank you for taking the time out. We will be in touch. I think if any of the audience may request for a connect, then we might just have to orchestrate that. We hope to again connect with you in a session soon at one other Zinnov event. But thanks for taking the time out to be with us.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to, thanks for first giving me the opportunity, and thanks for, a patient hearing. And I'd like to reach out to my industry friends and say, please reach out to us, because we've done a number of programs and no two programs are the same. We're willing to work. When I say we, it's not just me, but I think my compatriots in academia are very open to working with you. So, keep it simple, let's be creative, and let's go all in, right? So please feel free to reach out through Zinnov, and we'll be very happy to work with you and explore what the possibilities are. Thank you very much again, and you guys have a wonderful day.
Absolutely. Thank you so much to everyone. Before we leave for the day, I just had one sort of addition to make. As an extension of all of the events and the thought leadership that we roll out, all of that culminates into one of our biggest events in the year, which is called our Zinnov Confluence. This year, we've scheduled for the July 13th and 14th, and the main conference will be, at Sheraton in Whitefield in Bengaluru. We're expecting this to be bigger than ever before, right? Historically, we've had about 7,000 plus attendees over 2 days of sessions. We have 100 plus sessions, and we expect that the number of global speakers will be, our maximum and most ever this particular year. We also organize a whole bunch of masterclasses on the side, which are smaller workshop-based format sessions with external as well as subject matter experts talking. And you'll also be able to collaborate with the larger ecosystem, whether it's your talent ecosystem, whether it's a startup ecosystem, etc. So if you would be interested in partnering with us, in being able to collaborate with us, in looking at exploring speaking opportunities at the conference, please do let us know. The events team at Zinnov will be very, very happy to help you. You can also explore sponsorship of the event itself. And for any details on this, please do get in touch. If you'd like to register, please scan the QR code that's up on the screen, and it should take you to the registration link. But that's what we had. Thank you so much, for your time. Pawan, over to you to close the session.